Welcome. This week I thought while I was having my coffee, thought that I would chat to you about a few things. So firstly, I'm sort of preparing promos and things like that for my next book that's out at the end of May. This is Neighbours at War, another book set during the Jersey occupation, during the Second World War. For those of you who don't know, the Channel Islands were the only British soil to be invaded by the German forces during the Second World War. And here in Jersey, Guernsey was invaded on the 30th of June, but Jersey was invaded on the 1st of July 1940. And the Germans stayed here until our Liberation Day in Jersey is May the 9th, 1945 it was, and we celebrate it every day. It's always very exciting. It's actually a bank holiday. Families get together, we put up bunting and flags, and people ring church bells and have special afternoon teas and things like that. And it's a very poignant day. It's one we all remember on the island, even though those people who were here, trapped here during the occupation, my aunt being one of them, who sadly died this week at almost 90 in 2 months. So the people who were here during the occupation are getting older. The people who are here as children are getting older, but the memory is still very much kept alive by them, by the survivors, and also by their children and grandchildren. And it's through these stories that I was inspired to write, firstly, An Island at War, and now Neighbours at War. Neighbours at War is a totally different story to An Island at War. An Island at War is about a small family with a small hold in St. Wands, so in the northwest of the island, actually where I live. And it's an imaginary small holding, but it's their story and how they coped, especially when one of the German officers was billeted in their home. In this book, it's a story of neighbours. So this book is inspired actually by a true story, which I'll tell you more about as the months go along. I was approached by a lovely gentleman in his 80s now and his wife, and they told me the story, his mother's story, how as a young pregnant girl she came to the island having been let down by the man she assumed she would marry, and came to stay here and had her little boy here, who's, as I said, now in his 80s. And they told me her story, which was fascinating. They're actually researching it. And through that story and a very small snippet, well, an inspiration, I haven't used the lady's story, but a small snippet of another lady who was a linguist here during the war, translating German documents, I came up with the idea of Neighbours at War. And as I said, it's a story of neighbours. So in my book, Helen Bowman comes over from the East End of London in June 1940 to stay with her aunt because she's terrified her family won't accept the fact that she's having a baby and she hasn't got a ring on her finger. She's devastated that the man she thought she would marry is actually engaged to somebody else. She discovers this very late. She doesn't have the full story behind it because she actually doesn't give him a chance to explain. And days later, a couple of weeks later, the Germans invade and she is stuck here until 1945. And it's what happens to her. Her aunt starts the book not being very well. And so things go from bad to worse for poor Helen. And thankfully she has good neighbours living right next door. Now in my book, where Helen and her aunt Sylvia live is actually 2 Tynemouth Terrace. And it's actually where my great-grandmother lived throughout the Second World War, throughout the occupation. In my book, it's their family home. In real life, my great-grandmother actually had a room there, as did several other people. And there's an incident in this book that doesn't talk about, but it actually includes deportations in September 1942, which were traumatic for so many people. And in real life, at 2 Tynemouth Terrace, it was lots of different rooms. It wasn't just one family's home in real life. And 2 gentlemen who lived at the same address where my Helen and her aunt live were deported. And right next door, 3 Tynemouth Terrace, are their neighbours, the Hamill family. So it's Ida, quite recently widowed, with her 2 daughters, Peggy. Peggy becomes very good friends with Helen, and her younger sister, Babs, who works at Boots. And right next door, actually at that dress, during the occupation, was my great aunt Eileen. So it's quite poignant and very close to my family, obviously. And yes, I really enjoyed writing it, and I hope people enjoy reading it. So as I say, it's set during the hardships of the occupation. And I'm excited about it. My publisher is happy with it, which is always nice, obviously. So I will be waiting for it to come out in ebook on the 31st of May, and on the 6th of June on D-Day, the D-Day anniversary in the UK, certainly in paperback. Very nervously waiting for this. Nervous, excited, as I always am with a new book. The other thing I thought I'd talk about today was, I wasn't actually going to talk about that actually, was that so I'm making new plans for the year ahead for my YouTube channel. And one of them is that I have so many writer friends with so many fascinating stories. Every writer, as far as I'm aware, goes about researching their books differently. They're probably inspired by stories that then become novels in their novels. They also probably plan a book, write a book, edit, research, everything differently. It's very much an individual thing of how you do it. And so many authors I've spoken to over the years, each of them have their own way of doing it, and I certainly do, and I even do it differently for different books sometimes. It just depends on how I feel at the time or how it's working or whatever. So going forward, I will be interviewing friends probably on a Sunday evening, so that it's a quiet day for most, and it'll be in the evening so that my American subscribers to this channel can actually follow live when I do it live. That's the plan anyway. I'll probably do 2 interviews a month, maybe 1. I'll see how it goes. But if you have any ideas of things you'd like me to ask authors that you might want to know, just leave a comment below. The first interviews I'll be doing, it's not so much an interview, it'll be a chat. So for those of you who know me, my name is Deborah Carr, and I'm a USA Today bestselling author in that name. That's my real name. And in that I write historical fiction, like my Poppy sisters. I also write in a pseudonym. I actually have a couple of pseudonyms, but the main one I write in at the moment is Georgina Troy. And there's one of my Georgina Troy books, and I write contemporary romance series in that name. And if this is your first time here, thank you for joining us. If you've come here many times before, thank you again for coming over. I love chatting to you. If this is your first time, please subscribe. I think it's here below. If you want to just get a ping, an alert to let you know whenever I post a new video, because I tend to do them on like different days or whenever I'm free from running around after the dogs or writing or whatever. So one of the other things, for those of you who you might not know, is that as well as being writing these books, I'm also part of a trio of writers, local writers to Jersey, the Blonde Plotters. And as with the Blonde Plotters, so they're my close writer friends, they're both fabulous authors, is Kelly Clayton, who writes crime and historical fiction as Julia Hardy, and Gwyn Bennett, who writes crime. And we set up my VLF. This was in, oh gosh, I'm not exactly sure when we set it up, probably 2017 or 18. My VLF stands for My Virtual Literary Festival. And we set this up. We had a wonderful site, which was the brainchild of Gwyn Bennett. And it was put together by an excellent team for us. And we held online festivals because we are aware, living in an island or on an island as we do, we're aware that it's really expensive to actually, I mean, for us to go to any literary festivals in England, we have to pay for flights, or we could get a boat, but you know, with the weather, they stop very frequently, and also it's a much longer journey. But so we have to pay for flights and obviously hotels, and that can be very, very expensive. So we're also aware that there are a lot of people who have small children or don't have people to look after the children if they wanted to go away, if they could afford to, carers, that sort of thing. And so Gwyn came up with this idea of the online literary platform. And it was wonderful. We held literary festivals, we did individual interviews over a few years. And when the pandemic hit, in 2019, we actually won 4 awards. 3 over here at the Digital Awards, Annual Digital Awards, and 1 at the Future Book Awards, which is a massive achievement for us in London, which was incredibly exciting. But we were almost a victim of our own success, because when the pandemic came, we then were signed up to do BBC Big Book Weekend, which actually covered 5 days, as well as I think we probably had 6 festivals of our own to do. So we had a romance festival, historical festival, crime festival, that sort of thing, and individual interviews. And at the same time, we were working, either writing or doing whatever jobs that we do. And when you've got to write books, and then, it was essentially more than a full-time job. And all 3 of us really almost hit burnout, because it was just too much. And I think if we didn't have our writing to do as well, or jobs, we would have carried on. We were asked to do lots of exciting ventures, but we had to decide what came first, our writing or my VLF. And unfortunately for my VLF, it was our writing. But it was incredibly exciting to work with 2 really close friends who came much, much closer. During the lockdown, I had my husband, which was wonderful, but my children both live away, so I couldn't see them. Lots of holidays cancelled, or flights, for them to come home, whatever, cancelled. So it was a very traumatic time, as it was for everybody. But my VLF for that, was busy as we were, really helped, because it kept me busy. And I also wrote A Night at War, which was helped by being separated from my children, because of course I'm writing about people during the occupation who were separated by their families, although in their case they were separated for an awful lot longer, for 5 years. So my VLF. So the first thing I'm going to do, the first chat I'm going to do, will be with my 2 great friends, Gwyn Bennett and Clayton. I don't know the exact date yet, because all 3 of us are very busy people, but we will be getting together soon, and we will be chatting about ourselves and our writing, and hopefully you'll find it interesting. So as I said, if you don't want to miss out on that, subscribe below so that you get a ping, so you know when the posts come up. All right, so I suppose I actually am supposed to be writing the first draft of the 2nd book in my Georgina Troy Hollyhock Farm series, and I'd better get on, because I've got to deliver the book by, well, very soon actually. I've got another 6 weeks, I think, to finish it. I'm a little bit behind, but never mind. So that's what I'm doing. I better drink this very cooling coffee and get on with my work. And I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining me.